Okay, in this video, I want to discuss something that I think is very critical to learn at a very early stage in your web development career, and that is what is a div and kind of how to manipulate it into what you want it to be. So let's use. I want to show you this in two different interfaces, but let's start with the Tailwind interface. So here, and this is some previous stuff from another module. But so what is a div? A div is basically a section. So it's the HTML's way of classifying a section of your site. So it's gonna start that what its default nature is when you create a div with it. Remember, every HTML tag has an opening and closing tag. So it's the stuff that goes in between it that is the content of that element. So right here, just this div, what we can assume about it is that it's going to be a box of a size that we define. So if you're just using HTML and CSS, just CSS alone, you would define it in your CSS. But we use Tailwind mostly, and Tailwind is a way of doing your CSS inline, which means that you don't have to go to the CSS file and put styles into your CSS file. You can do it directly into your HTML, and you do that through something called a class. And a class is something you can add to an HTML element, which will manipulate it. So you have your div, and so your site's gonna be filled with divs, and you're gonna have divs within divs within divs. So just a div in and of itself would be, you can give it a height. So we'll give it a height of 96. There's predefined heights and widths for Tailwind. We'll use the predefined ones here. You can add custom ones later, but I don't even know how to do that. I just use the ones they have for me that they already have. And then you give it a background. So a BG, and then any color you want. We'll do amber 500, and that right there will give you your div. So that's what a div is. So an H1 tag is a header, an H2 tag is a smaller header, an H3 is a smaller header, a P is a paragraph. A div is a section or a box, and that's what's going to be what's kind of defining what you're building. And things can go inside or outside of the div. You can put divs within divs. You can have divs, but all kinds of things. Do you have divs next to each other, divs under each other? The site is built on divs. And so we can change the background color. We can do whatever. So I'm going to show you. So you get the idea here. You can add a border, and then border black, the color of the border, and then the size of the border 2 through 8. So 8. Yeah, that's the border. And then if you want to add margin, you can add. I've showed this in another module, but you can press M dash and then a size. So M-7 will put it that far away from the edge. If you want just the top margin, you do M top. If you want just the right mark or just the left, ML. So you can see that you can, and you need to learn all of these Tailwind classes and how they manipulate the DOM elements, the HTML elements. Go on to sorry, that's for another job. Go on to Tailwind's site and look at their documentation, and it'll just show you how it works. Just start testing different things. The more be like, because this is how I figured it out. Is I would say, hey, I want this to happen on the screen, and then I go figure out how to do it. And with Tailwind, in HTML and Tailwind alone, you can do basically anything you want in terms of informational design, things like that. It's when you want to start doing dynamic things, so drop down menus. User generated content, some input fields. Well, you can do input fields with HTML. I'm not an expert at that, but basically anything that's dynamic, making a spreadsheet on the website, like having a live spreadsheet in the website, any functions you want to have, anything like that that's mathematical or is dynamic, that's going to be JavaScript or Ruby or Python or PHP, and that's kind of more that's harder to learn, but it's something that could be rewarding to learn. But if you want to just manipulate, if you want to just get quickly to where I want to write something I want to code something, and I want to see what happens on the screen, this is the quickest way to get to that goal. So the divs are the backbone of that. So you can create a bunch of divs. So like right here we have our div, but let's say we want to copy this div, and we want to put another div lower than that. It'll give us another one. And let's say we want to actually space those divs out so that they will be space in between them. We can put them in a parent div, so a div that contains those divs. You get the idea. It's divs within divs within divs. A div that contains those 3 divs, we'll give it a class equals to space or gap space y, because that's the y-axis. I think this is the y-axis. I think you have to test it out, but here Yeah, it spaces it. Y4. If I was to do X4, it would space it this way. We want to go this way. So space Y4, we can make it space Y8. It would space it out even further. So you can play around with it. But let's say we wanted to create a div that the styling was not it was not Tailwind, it was just regular CSS. How the styling the internet started. So you give it a class, and the class doesn't have to be a specific class like Tailwind. It can just be a name, and you just give it a name of what you want to do with that thing. So if we want to make it the background, change it to background. And so we call it that, and we make the div like normal. And now we go into our CSS file, and this is where you're going to learn all this in the free Code Camp course, but this is just an idea. So basically, to refer to that class and say I want to do something to that div, you put dot and then the name of that class. If you're doing a class, let's just leave it at that for now. For a class, now you put it in these brackets, and then you're gonna add whatever thing you want to do. So for us, it's going to be background color, and we're going to change it to red. Okay, now that that's red, we also need to set the height of 96 pixels and a width of 96 pixels. Where's the, here we go. Yeah, so, okay, height of 96, width of 96 pixels. Yeah, so there you go. You're accomplishing the same thing. You can even give it a border of black. Yeah, I'm not an expert on all these. And the thing is, you're not being tested here. You can literally look any of this up whenever you want. It's the skill you're learning is knowing what to look up and how to plug it into your code to make it do what you want it to do. That's the skill. It's not a skill of memorizing everything. It's not a skill of knowing everything. What you're knowing is how to operate it. So it'd be like if you learn to drive a car, and then the skill is actually knowing to go 5 miles per hour over the speed limit to not get caught by cops. That would be an example of you kind of know what to do in this situation, but it's an unwritten rule. You learn the skill of this by practicing it and then testing a lot of things. It's testing and practicing, not so much memorization, but you do need to memorize the rules. You memorize the rules, and then all these classes, all these things, you know where they go because there's a pattern to it. And once you figure out that pattern, you can do whatever you want. So that's the basics of the divs using CSS or Tailwind to create divs. I think Tailwind's a lot faster and easier, but CSS, original CSS, offers a lot more different customization options. So that's divs. You can do, and so I mentioned this earlier. You can do the same thing. You can just go into your Sublime, or if you guys use Sublime, if you use VS Code, whatever you use. It's not a matter of what you use, but I would recommend using something that has syntax highlighting and autocomplete. If it has syntax highlighting, autocomplete, it can probably figure out the answer for you. If you start typing background, and it'll give you options like background color, background style, all those things. It'll give you those options, so in case you forget, you don't have to look them up. So I would recommend doing this with use Sublime and then use Tailwind Play and mess around with it and create divs and just practice it. And you can put stuff inside the divs. You can put H1 tags in the divs. You can put P tags in the divs, whatever you want. Mess around, learn divs. That is the start of your coding career. Will be knowing how to write, H1 tags and P tags, but also divs. And so how to manipulate them, how to change where they are on the screen. If you can change where a div is on the screen, change. And I'm getting red because I feel like I don't know this sometimes myself, but I have done this. So I've completed the free Code Camp course, but the more you play around with it, the better you'll get at it. But you're never going to feel like a total expert, and you shouldn't. If you feel like a total expert, you are not meant to do this, because you should always be learning. It's a consistent learning thing. And yes, you're going to feel like an expert. You're going to feel like an expert, but you should never get complacent. You should always be practicing and trying to do harder things and trying to make this, a full-time job. So yeah, thanks.